Hi, everybody. We're going to just wait another minute. Let everybody who's arriving on time to join. You can see me turning my head all the time. That's because I'm letting people in. So 1 minute and we will begin. Okay. So, hi, everybody. I'm just setting it all up. You'll occasionally see me looking to the side. That is people joining, and I need to let them in. So I apologize. I'm paying attention, and we're going to begin in a moment. As people are joining, I will introduce myself. So thank you very much for coming today. I see the list growing and growing of participants. My name is Tal Lazar. For the past 20 years, I worked as a filmmaker, primarily as a cinematographer and a movie director. Nowadays, I don't call myself a movie director, I call myself a vision director, and I'll talk in a moment about what that exactly means. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about pitching, which is sort of like a very small slice of this bigger world that is storytelling and business. And I hope that you'll enjoy. And at any point, feel free to send a message in the chat. I have my, like F-16 style setup here with, 10 screens and everything. So at some point, as I'm scanning everything, I will also see your question, but there will be time for questions at the end and also in the middle, actually. So let's get going. Just a few words about what it is exactly that I do and what a vision director actually is. So I'm going to share a slide here just to show you. Basically, I've found over time that business leaders, CEOs, or any person who's doing business is actually very, very similar to a movie director. In what way? Movie directors need to, deliver their story, and they do that in two ways. One, let's call it direct. They need to pitch. Movie directors need to pitch, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. They need to do a lot themselves. But also, and here's another person coming, but also they need to work with a lot of other people. Let's say set designers, cinematographers, actors, and so on and so on. And somehow, even without being experts in any of these fields themselves, they're able to deliver a coherent story, right? So this is not unique to movie directors. This is actually something that any CEO or any leader in business needs to do too, right? Think of a CEO who needs to work with a CMO of marketing, a sales department, a PR firm, support team, and so on and so on and so on. And somehow that CEO needs to work with only two things, exactly like a movie director, and that is a vision and communication skills. And today we're talking about pitching, which you can see from this big list here, which is just a sample, is just one small aspect of what that actually means. So let's get down to business here. There's a lot to talk about. And like I said, at the end, there'll be time for questions. I'm going to try and squeeze a lot of information to this 1 hour session. Usually when I deliver this thing, there's a little bit more time and I work with individuals and companies. But I'm going to try and cram a lot of information in here. So you'll maybe feel like I'm going from one subject to the other, but hopefully just enough to give you a little bit of insight and value into any of these subjects in particular. Okay? So as I start, I'm going to actually ask you a question. Think of a teacher that you had in your times at school or whatnot, a teacher that really inspired you and that you remember to this day. I'm going to give you a moment. Write their name or any description actually in the chat. And maybe if you can, what was it about them that made them so great? I'm going to give you a few seconds to write that. And if you want, look at the chat and see what other people are writing. Hopefully we'll get some interesting things. So let's see. Come on, come on. Gotta write some stuff. Okay, here we go. So, Christine, you remember your fifth grade teacher, passion for history, and Caleb, Philip was your teacher, and you got a lot done, and you really cared. And Hannah, uh, Spanish teacher. Okay, great. So, thank you for that. Keep writing. This is a two-way thing. It's a conversation. It's not just me talking today. And here, Shiri, it's good to see you, seventh grade teacher. So let's put that aside for a second. And I'll tell you that when I pitched my startup, Quander, this is actually how I started. I started with, I'm sorry again, people are coming, I need to admit them. I started with asking this simple question about the teacher. Quander was doing something very special, taking people and elevating them in that position of a teacher. And this question is how I started my pitch, and I'll get back to why I did that and how it helped this conversation that happened afterwards and how it drove me closer to the goal. But before we do that, I want you to think for a second about how you arrived to this conversation today. You arrived in this weird webinar expecting something, right? You sit in your chair and you wait for me to tell you something new, or maybe be entertained, or maybe learn, or whatever it is that you came here to do. That's an interesting position. And think about your investors, if we're talking about pitching for investors, how they arrive to that pitch and what they want. Or actually, you know what? Any audience and how they arrive to a movie. Now, these kind of expectations is something that storytelling experts and leadership classes and whatnot usually don't talk about a lot. You arrive to this thing expecting to be given something. You gave me the time today, so you deserve something in return. But now I'm going to flip it for a second and think of us, the founders, the people on that stage who are standing there, and how terrifying is that to be in the spotlight in front of people who have these big expectations from you, and they're all sitting quietly and looking at you, and everything is dark in front of you. You know nothing about them. And you know what? That is really difficult. And to even increase the level of difficulty, it's not only that they're there waiting for you. Your job is not just to entertain them, is to turn them from being passive to active, to change their mind, to get them to invest, whatever, any action that you want them to do. And they're just sitting there waiting for you. Now, when I present it like that, I think you'll agree with me that this is a pretty tough spot to be in, right? But we have to remember that all audiences, no matter where, arrive with expectations and that we need to sort of sync up to that. This is the same in movies, by the way. When we go watch movies, we already know something. We saw the poster, we know that an actor is playing there, and a friend told us something. I actually personally like to know as little as possible when going into a movie, but I can't really know nothing, right, about the genre or anything. So how does all this apply to pitching? At its core, pitching is really just storytelling with a purpose, right? You're telling a story here, and you're trying to spark some sort of action. It's not just about investors and donors. You can be selling something, you can be convincing your friends to go to your favorite bar. Whatever it is that you're pitching, you're saying things, but you want something to be achieved, to happen as a result of these things. So I need to start with asking myself, what are my goals of this pitch? What do I really want to get out of this interaction? Now, every pitch is different, every situation is different, but let me sort of put a few things in front of you that are sort of universal, that are mostly true for almost all pitches, right? So let's start. First of all, we want to get people's attention. We know that attention is a fleeting thing. We know that it's difficult to get people's attention and that attention span is very, very short. So we want to get it and we want to keep it. That's a big goal, number one. Goal number two is to establish authority. When Jordan Peele directed Get Out, before he directed the film, he wrote the script and he tried to sell the script to producers. And in the beginning, they actually loved the script and they agreed with him. They wanted to make the movie, but then he discovered that he also needs to sell himself. It's not enough to sell the product, you also need to sell the fact that you are the only person who can do it. Right? So this is a little bit of a different task. So I want to establish authority over the people I'm pitching to, yeah, knowing that they have more money or they have more experience and so on and so on and so on. But I know something that they don't know. So this is goal number two. Now, goal number three is to get them to care. They're not going to do anything without actually being emotionally involved. Remember this word, emotion, because this is the crux. This is what it's all about here. That emotional involvement. I could be putting graphs in front of you until tomorrow and you'll forget about me the next day. But if I move you in some way, you might just remember it. So emotion is important. Of course, we want to get people active, right? We don't want them to just be passive. They ultimately need to do something, not just listen to me, but do something. We'll get there, but that's a big goal. And ultimately, and the last thing that I want to mention as a goal is to learn something about my audience. Why do I need to learn about them? Because this is a conversation. Today, sure, you'll hear me talk more because this is not really a pitch. This is more like a class. But normally in a pitch, you want to have it go both ways. And it's very important to listen. Listening, ironically, is more important than speaking in a pitch. Okay? So I want to achieve all of that in my pitch. Now, here's something interesting. My question that I asked you earlier about your favorite teacher actually achieved all of these goals. First of all, I got your attention because when you need to do something, like remember about your childhood teacher, you have to focus. You have to pay attention. You have to now you do something. Now you remember that person and I got you there, right? Now, you don't know why I'm asking you to do it. And if you actually did it, then that means that you put a little bit of trust in me. You're allowing me to take you on a journey, not knowing exactly where that's going to lead. So that's how authority is built, right? You trusted me. It's a tiny, tiny little bit of trust, but that's how it builds. You know, you can't get everything right away. I'm taking you on a journey somewhere, and you are there for the ride, and I'm leading you there. That's how authority is built. Now, I also took you to a personal experience that is emotional, right? That teacher that you remember them. Look at what people wrote. You remember them because of an emotional connection. So I'm starting to build on that experience. That is your individual experience. Now, I also turned you from passive to active. It's a very small activity, maybe, to think about it, but people wrote something in the chat. When you want to move people into action from sitting down just listening to you, it's actually a huge leap to get them from sitting, listening, doing nothing to, let's say, investing or going somewhere and doing something. So action is built slowly. Research shows that the difference from doing nothing to doing a little thing is actually much bigger than doing that little thing to doing a little bit more, right? So by getting you to, I don't know, write something in the chat, which sounds silly, I got you to do something. So the next step of doing something is actually much closer than before when you were just sitting there listening. It's like, okay, well, this guy's going to tell me, right? And of course, at the end, after everything, I got important information. Because Quander, for example, was doing stuff related to edtech, education technology. So if I ask you, what your favorite teacher is, who your favorite teacher is, and you tell me why, now I can tailor my pitch to you and say, that's exactly what we're doing. Or, at Quander, we build on the science of learning, and what your teacher did is close to that, and so on and so on and so on. So actually, one question is all it took to apply all these goals that I just talked about. Now, of course, the question is only one way to do this. There's more ways, and we'll talk about that briefly, but it's just an example of the fact that it's actually not rocket science here. It's not like a huge thing that costs a lot of money or that you need to work really hard. It's strategically you do one thing, and it brings with it all that good stuff. Now, movies, funnily enough, they do exactly the same thing, right? Especially today, think about it. You're watching streaming, you can change the channel. We used to have channels. Today is the tab, the different movie, whatever it is, the different TikTok and so on. You can do that easily and very, very, very quickly. So it's not just with movies, not just about getting your attention, it's about keeping your attention and keeping you there. So movies do that with emotion, right? So in movies, one of the techniques that we use is called a running start. What's a running start? Start from the middle of an action without all the introductions and so on and so on. The frame that you see on screen now is from Crazy Stupid Love. Movie starts, couple sitting in a restaurant, she asks him for divorce, right? Or how about Mission Impossible 3, right? Beginning with Ethan Hunt getting beat up, and this is the situation. So right away, no introductions. I started with, hello, I'm Tal, blah, blah, all that stuff. I kind of gave it a little bit more time because people came in. But really, there's no time to waste, especially if people's attention span is so short, right? Immediately jump in and get them right there. Movies do that. You can do that too. Now, the interesting thing is that pitching and teaching actually have a lot in common. If you become a better pitcher, you'll also become a better teacher. And if you have experience teaching, then even a little bit, just helping kids, doing something, it doesn't need to be a big lecture, you can apply the same principles in pitching. A great way to authority is to teach somebody something. Actually, learning is a lot of fun. I'm not talking about the type of learning that we remember from school where you're just sitting there for hours and you're waiting for this to be over. That's not learning. Learning is when you actually feel that you're growing. Our brain is wired for survival, and it actually rewards us with dopamine when our curiosity is met with an answer. So you can use that in a pitch by creating curiosity and then answering these questions to create authority. Think of your mentors. Think of the great teachers that we started with. You obviously want them around in your life. So when you're pitching, become the teacher. When people want to be around you, maybe they'll do what it takes to keep you around, whatever the pitch is for, money and so on and so on. So, okay, I'll pause here for a moment. We're in it for like 20 minutes and look already what we've covered. We talked about audience expectations, we talked about the goals of a pitch, and we talked about the importance of being a teacher. So kind of give me a sense in the chat. What is this like? Is it boring? Is it interesting? Is it new stuff? Is it old stuff? Any thought? I see, Kyung, you're already interested. That's great. Anybody else? What is, okay, great. Interesting mix of old and new. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for connecting things that we already know with new things, right? You don't want to drown in the ocean of new. Enjoy the psychological aspect of pitch length. We'll get there. Absolutely, RG. Okay, so great thought. Please continue writing your thoughts here. And yeah, I said earlier, curious about real example. I'll get there too. I'm trying to get as much as possible squeezed in, I promise you. There is like, what, 40 minutes or so? There's so much to talk about. And you can see that I could talk about this for 5 hours. So doing this in 40 minutes is a challenge. But okay, curiosity and answer, that stands out. Great, thanks, Hannah. So I talked earlier a little bit about these kind of like leadership classes and everything that, storytelling for business and so on. They usually mention, the hero's journey or Aristotle. And I admit I kind of make fun of that sometimes because this is undergrad stuff, and now we're at PhD level. So we're really trying to make this very advanced and very, very applicable. So I'm going to start giving you some techniques that are applicable, but we need to expand our horizon a little bit and see how it all connects with theory. So in movies, we have something called transportation, or the scientists call this narrative transportation theory. Okay, big word, right? Big statement. What does that mean? When you go and you watch a movie, a really good movie, then you forget the everyday stuff, right? You identify with the character. You really care about what's going on. You're really immersed in the story. Now, research shows that that state of transportation is exactly the state that can change opinions, that can shift the mindset. And that's, of course, what we want in a pitch. So what we're looking for is not just to tell a story, but we're looking to put people in a very specific state where they get themselves emotionally connected and very invested in the story. How do we do that? I'll start with how not to get there, and that is slides. How many of you who are doing pitches start with, okay, I'm going to do the pitch, opening PowerPoint? That's not the answer, right? It's not there. You can have the greatest presentation, but the presentation is just a visual aid. You can see these weird slides. If I gave you the slides from today, you'd be like, what's going on? What is this guy talking about? It's all like all over the place. It doesn't mean anything. The, the slides themselves are there to do something we'll talk about a little bit later. They're not your pitch, right? The pitch is something else that you do. So this is one important thing. The second thing is how to get the actual transportation. We need to get to know our audience. This is where learning about our audience, like I said, who's your favorite teacher or whatever, becomes very, very important. What do they want? What do investors want? Now, the simple answer that you might think, and a lot of people think that, is, well, investors want a return of investment. They want to make money. So what does that cause you to do? It causes you to create a pitch with a lot of graphs and numbers to show and prove that your venture, your idea has a lot of financial potential. If you've ever done this, you know it doesn't work. How come it doesn't work? It doesn't work. If they want money, here, there's just all the answers on the screen. You still need the graphs and the data and all that stuff, but for later. We actually need to look much deeper than just making money with investors. Think of, some famous investors. Maybe if they're so big and you're actually meeting with one of them, there's actual interviews that you can read and get to what it is that they want. But really the question is, why did they become investors to begin with? What is it that caused them to do that? They already have the money, right? So what's the big deal? Well, maybe they want to build something big. Maybe they want to be part of something successful. Maybe they need to believe in a vision. They want to feel confident and excited and curious. Before you know it, you're in some sort of an emotional place that people with resources want to meet you in order to get on a mission. It actually has very little to do with money. When the emotions are there, the rest matters less. You see it around us all the time. People who have less experience in business or didn't do that well, okay, they get the investment and then they get coupled with somebody who's more experienced to guide them. Possible. Um, Whatever it is, emotions are the gateway to narrative transportation. No matter how you look at it, emotions drive decisions. We don't make logical decisions. I wish it was the case, right? The world would be a very, very different place if people made decisions only based on logic. That's not how it works. We make decisions based on emotion, and research actually links emotions to memory. We remember when we feel, even when it's bad. Even a bad emotion will trigger a memory. I remember standing in front of a class for the first time having to say something. I have no idea what it was that I needed to say, but I remember the situation. Why? Because of the emotion. So in movies, we use characters as a way to drive transportation through something that's called character identification. When you care about Simba, right, then you care about the outcome. You want to stay there to see how it's going to unfold. And when it's really good, you'll see the movie second time, third time, fourth time. You already have the information. You already know how it's going to turn out, yet you watch it still. Why? Because of the emotional experience, not because you know the outcome, right? So for you, your audience is unique. And you need to get into their interests and expectations and motivation. You need to really learn them well. Now, I know that for some of you, this is like, oh my God, now I need to do all this research. But there's some good news here. First of all, you only need to speak to your audience. So when I say learn your audience, it's also developing a filter. You don't need to talk to everybody. Quandr was about edtech, about education technology. People who don't care about education are not going to invest no matter how great my pitch is. So I need to only talk to the people who connect with this specific subject. Now, this, by the way, connects to many other things, much bigger than pitching. Think of social media, for example. A lot of posts, if you go on LinkedIn and you look at especially business-driven posts, start with if you are, or a question, are you? So let's say, are you a teacher who is, blah, 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 blah? Or if you are a teacher. Now, what I'm saying is this, emotion is fleeting and attention is fleeting. So if you say, if you are a teacher and I'm not a teacher, I'll scroll past, right? But the thing is that if you also say that and I am a teacher, you're actually using important real estate. Because I might care about it, but I'll probably scroll past. Think about it. You're walking in the street, somebody walks up to you and says, hey, can I ask you a question? I am in New York. I won't even hear the end of that question. I will walk away. Now, I heard that person say a few words. That was a stage. I was there. So rather than asking, start talking and talk to your audience. If that's not the right audience, they'll walk away, but they would walk away anyway. It doesn't matter. You didn't lose anything. And if it is your audience, then you got that stage for a moment. So if you're able to say something smart, maybe there is a chance. This works, like I said, it's bigger than pitching. Just the other day, I tried this on a LinkedIn post. So you can see, I don't know, I got like 400,000 views on this thing and so on and so on. Look at the first line up there, right? It's driving at people who are either teachers or look for letter of recommendation or whatnot. I didn't say, are you recommending students or whatnot? It wouldn't work. So this was an experiment, and obviously it worked. So who knows, right? We'll keep experimenting. Maybe we found a secret formula here. But in any case, another example. Somebody asked here, specific examples. I'll give you another example. I'm about to have a workshop with a global organizations of Jewish startups. So when I pitched my workshop to them, to the leader of this network, I talked about how I got a sign of excellence from the president of Israel in the year 2000 for an initiative that I've had. First, that got that person's attention, right? That works for him. It wouldn't work for other people. I tailor it to the person I'm speaking with. Okay, so I need to learn about them. I need to see who that is and drive directly to their mission. Okay, so one prerequisite to this kind of transportation I'm talking about is trust. Think of watching a horror movie. I don't know if you've ever watched a horror movie that you kind of felt that you're not in confident hands. I mean, I don't like horror movies specifically, personally, but the feeling is that you can't completely let go. And that's very, very important because we want our audience to let go. We want them to completely let go and forget about everything. So we need to establish trust. Think of watching a Christopher Nolan movie. Christopher Nolan has trust, right? You go and you watch a movie by Christopher Nolan and you trust that it's going to be okay because you've seen others and he's very, very successful. Okay, we're not Christopher Nolan yet, but there are other ways to establish trust. One important way is to link to the emotion, like when I asked about the teacher. because that is creating a type of authority through empathy. You tell me about your teacher that you connected to, and I relate to that, and now we are together on that same playing field. We have something in common, and slowly we're establishing trust. Another way to establish trust is to have extensive knowledge in the field that you're pitching on, much more than the people in front of you. Yeah, I know it's difficult, but the fact is, they say that when you stand in front of a class to teach, you need to know at least twice, if not more, than what you're teaching about. And the reason is that, well, guess what? People are going to ask questions. It's never going to go by the script that you designed. Somebody's going to pull you in some way or whatnot. So when I teach filmmakers, now after 15 years, I don't need to practice much because I have this knowledge in my head. Whatever it is that you're pitching, you will get there. But in the beginning, it requires actually rehearsing, and it requires doing the research so that you know a lot more than what you're actually talking about. Knowledge drives trust. I'll give you an example of building trust and using the techniques that I'm talking about. A while ago, I worked with a startup founder in gaming, and we workshopped his pitch, how he's gonna talk with investors. And we got to this place where he says, and now I'm him, I'm playing him. And I say, okay, but before we begin, I just have to tell you something. Something happened yesterday that is really related to what we're talking about, and I wanted to tell you that. Now, of course, the pitch already started, right? But this, before we start, let me just tell you, it's a sneaky way. It's a side door in saying, let's hold on for a second, I have a story to tell you. That drives to attention. Yesterday, I was visiting a friend, and his kid was sitting on the floor there playing some console game. And I noticed this kid was just kind of going through the motions, was kind of not really enjoying the game. So I asked him, listen, if you would had enter innovation here, right? Um, would it be different? And he lit up and said, okay, you get the shit, you get the gist, right? So basically what through this character, through this kid, I'm now shifting to the value. And then, of course, I finish with, now imagine if we could do this with 1 million kids. Pitch, right? So it's a simple way to use an individual experience, and many founders do this. If you watch some pitches online, you will see that this is a very, very common technique. It's very important to do that no matter your industry. Like even in industries that are about factories and things that are, it's important to show that you know the experience of the person on the ground, the story of a factory worker, of the truck driver. When I say know more about the field than the people in front of you, I'm not necessarily talking about numbers and graphs and all these things that are sort of hard to remember. I'm talking about the actual experience. Most likely the people you're going to pitch to are, are going to be so high above the clouds, they're already no longer connected to the people on the ground. Well, you can be. So you come in and you tell them stories of the people who are actually doing the work, or people who are experiencing hands-on the things that you're talking about, and they won't be able to compete with you. Also, nobody can argue with you when you have the example. You have the example, you have proof. So it's very important to always go through these stories into the big, whatever, data or whatnot, and not the other way around. All these stories, as you notice, they have a character. The gaming example that I just said has a player, right? The Quander example, my startup, had a teacher. The audience doesn't connect with abstract concepts, platforms or systems or ideas. These are abstract. We need characters. In movies, by the way, it's the same thing. There is no movie about love as a concept, but there are a lot of movies about characters who are in love, right? So we need the character. Okay, as we get close to the end of this, you see that time flies. Um, I'm not there yet, but I'm just pointing it out that please think of questions that you may have and write them down so that we can get to them at the end, so that we avoid notorious tumbleweed that happens sometimes. And I say, okay, questions, and then there's like, crickets. So think about it. You probably noticed as I'm talking today that I'm not moving in a very linear way in my conversation, in my lecture today with you, right? The subject order is a little bit zigzaggy. I talked about one thing, I move to another thing, then I go back to one thing. It seems almost a little disorganized, but think for a moment, what do you think of me? Does it look like I know what I'm talking about? Does it look like you would trust me with this thing? The technique that I'm using as I'm presenting this to you is called interleaving. When we design lessons, and for all purposes, a pitch is the same thing as a lesson, we tend to organize information that as if it makes sense to us, right? The way that we deliver it in sort of like a cause and effect kind of a way. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. That works great for me to remember how to deliver it to you, but actually, it doesn't work so well for listening and remembering. In pitches, the structure that is normal is, problem, solution, market, blah, 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 all that stuff. Now, imagine that you're an investor and you're listening to pitches all day long, right? You hear the structure again and again and again. The content might change, but the structure stays the same. It's a little bit difficult to keep attention, right? So the answer is to interleave, to do a little bit of zigzagging so that people stay engaged. In education, there is another value to this. And remember, education and pitching, very close to each other. Um, you're not familiar, right? As a listener to this, you're not familiar with what I'm giving you here. And you never have a moment to become familiar with it to the point where you can disengage. So this is one big thing. But the other thing is, okay, I'll give you an example. The best way is just to give an example. Math. Look at this simple equation here. In order to solve this thing, you need to know subtraction, addition, multiplication, and fractions. But you don't need to be an expert in any of these fields. You just need to do it enough, know it enough in order to solve this specific equation, right? So the way that this is taught is not to make you an expert in, I don't know, fractions, go all the way fractions, then go back to the beginning, and all the way subtraction, and so on. The way is to teach you the minimum amount needed so that you can solve this equation and keep zigzagging and increasing the difficulty level. What happens when they do that is that you get continuous proof that you're learning, that you can apply this again and again and again, and the difficulty level goes up and up and up. So this is absolutely something that can be applied in a pitch. And don't hesitate, I'm not doing that today, but don't hesitate in your pitch, in your presentation, to just go out of order. Like be that, crazy professor that is a genius, but you see that their mind is too fat. Be that person, embody that personality, because the result is like, wow, that person is so brilliant. Probably should have a strong COO or somebody with them, but he's got my money. I think that's not a bad place to be at. So don't hesitate to go in presentation and then jump, 1 second, go back to slide number 2, go to slide number 12. What happens is that it shows that you are swimming in this material so much that structure, you don't need it. You don't really need the slides per se. The listener has to always be a little bit behind you, never ahead of you. That's how you establish authority and keep attention. Here's a few more techniques that you can actually apply easily. Dual coding. This is where slides come in. Our brain processes images, sound, text, and all that in different ways. So rather than have each medium just replicate the other, right? I say, hi, my name is Tal Lazar, and there's Tal Lazar in front of. Okay. Instead of that, I'm going to couple images and text that are a little bit different to use the advantage of each one. That's why I put this kid pulling on the coat in front of you, right? It's funny. It has nothing to do. We're not talking about kids here or anything. You saw that the images that I put of you are a little bit weird and funny. That's just driving to attention and memory. I want you to look at one thing and listen to one thing, and they don't have to be the same thing. You in your brain are going to make it together into something new. So that's why, and I'm sure you've seen this, people who, it's okay, or maybe an experience with pitching, and then they read off the slide. There's a ton of text, and then you stand there and you read off of it. This is very, very difficult to keep up with, even if the words are words of wisdom. It's very, very difficult. So use dual coding. Now, another thing, I'm going to release this for a second. Enough. Another technique is to take breaks. Not bathroom breaks, but breaks like earlier when I said I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions and ask for your opinion. That was a break. And some people wrote, and that creates some space. It creates space for people to express themselves and for you to get information, for you to drink a glass of water too if you need, but also to reset everything. And it's not all about blah, 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 blah all the time. I also recommend using what I call attention hooks. What's an attention hook? It's mini stories that you can pull at any given moment. So what you do is you look at everything you want to say, at your script or whatever you want to call it, and you find examples, anecdotes from real world, from your experience, made up, whatever works, right? And they need to be really brief, not longer than a minute. And you have them in your back pocket. This is great not only for pitching, by the way, it's media interviews, anything like that. And as soon as you see that people in front of you are spacing out a little bit, you just stop. You say, this reminds me of a story. This reminds me of something that I really want to tell you. And you bring their attention back. You go off script as much as possible, but actually it's on script. You have them prepared. So just have as many as possible, memorize them, put a list, whatever it takes, and have these attention hooks for you. And finally, the last technique that I would say is so important that I said in the beginning is all about listening. In movies and also in theater, actors, the profession of acting, should actually be called reacting and not acting. It's not about delivering monologues. It's about listening. Actors memorize the text so that they don't need to think while delivering it, and then they can be only listening to the actors in front of them. And the answer is through the intonation and the behavior and body language and not the text. That sort of subtextual delivery is really where it's at, right? Not the actual words. You've seen these movies, you've seen these scenes in movies where they talk about nothing, talk about breakfast, but you're at the edge of your seat. Why? Because it's not about the text. So listening is a superpower. This is something that I actually work on with my clients, to listen while pitching, while talking. How do you do this? It sounds very complicated, almost multitasking, but it's actually easy and very attainable. And it's really, I'm only taking techniques from acting and applying them to our field so that you can listen to your audience and adapt your pitch in real time. Okay, so I'm going to hold here, stop here for some questions. I think you saw that there's a ton of stuff, right? A ton of stuff. So I see some questions here. Thank you for that, and let's dive into it. We have a few minutes. So, question from Sanabel. For the pitch that already started, how do you think of something like the kid playing video games in the background on the fly? Oh, that's a great question, right? I think that let's sort of separate this two layers of this. One is, of course, over time and with confidence and with life experience, it becomes much easier to draw from your experience and remember things while you speak or while you pitch. So let's put that aside. It becomes easier with time. What's interesting is to try and anticipate beforehand what people are going to ask and what this is all about. The technique that I use, that I used successfully in the past, is to start by pitching to people I don't want to work with. I know it sounds silly, but hear me out. You start your day, let's say that you have a big pitch. Never schedule that in the beginning of your day. Schedule it, okay, let's say that you don't have to have it in the morning, it's at 10 a.m. or something. Your day starts with two pitches with people that you know absolutely you never want to work with. By the time you reach the important pitch, you are there. You're in the zone, right? So this is a technique that I use that worked for me to this day. I use it. And this is a great way because you're still pitching to people. So over the experience, I don't know if it's even fake experience, it's experience that you gain, you will come up with these ideas. It's really to try and generate experience as much as possible, anticipate what people are going to ask you, and find a solution. Always decompress, think of the pitch after the fact. What could I have done better? If it's people that you don't want to work with, I dare you, ask them. What do you care? You're not going to work with them. Hey, listen, Sanabel, silly question, but you saw my pitch. What do you remember from it? What worked? Is there anything you think I should improve? I know it sounds like a little bit scary. Give it a try. You'll be surprised because when you catch people on the spot like that, they might just tell you the truth. Okay, next question. Caleb, do you mentor? I'm currently working on my pitch deck and struggle with telling a story throughout and just read off the slides and go off what I know in my head. You mentioned dual coding after I wrote this. Great question. So first of all, the answer is yes. I talked about my work with clients a lot today, and I do mentor, and I'll show my email at the end, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and we'll talk about your specific situation in private. What I will say is this. Slides can actually, you can use slides in a sneaky way. Slides can be your reminder. Look how many slides I had today. I had over 40 slides. Why did I have over 40 slides, if you could call them slides, these pictures? Some of the time, I use it to remind myself what I'm supposed to talk about. So I'm not going to read the entire block of text because people are sitting there waiting for me. But over time, I'm looking at this picture of these two actors. It's like, acting. I need to talk about acting. So you can create these memory triggers and use the techniques that we all used if it's in the SAT or any of that stuff. You print it on cards and you scramble them, and then you pull up this thing. Actors, okay, remember that. Remember this, right? Once you learn it out of order, you will know it also in order. And like I said earlier, maybe you will be able to scramble the order in real time and start really remembering it. But there's nothing that is working as well as experience. So just put yourself in a pitch, more and more pitch to everybody until we laugh about it, but until I wake you up in the middle of the night and I say, Caleb, this slide, and you'll know exactly what to say. Like, you need to know it that well because there's a lot of distractions. Sometimes we pitch and there's a honk outside in the street and they're like, so you got to really, really know it well. Okay, Katie, when you're first planning a pitch, what are the main questions we should be asking ourselves to help guide our thinking? Okay, so first of all, I saw some people joined late, so if you're one of them, know that this is recorded and you'll be able to see that I actually talked about this specifically. I'll just repeat and say that this is very, very much audience oriented. So I'm not going to think about what I want to say. That's most of the time, that's how we think about it, right? I'm not going to think about what I want to say. Instead, I'm going to think, what do they need to hear? And it's a different type of question. Remember, don't fall into the trap. What do investors need to hear? Oh, they need to hear that something is going to make money. No. You need to drive to that emotional core. You need to ask yourself a different question. Why are they even there? Why do they chose this weird profession of listening to people's ideas? They probably have a family and want to spend time with them. So why do that? Why spend time with me today? It's not about the money. So this is the single most important thing is to get to know your audience. That's one. And two is to find your story. And this is a little bit bigger than today's, the scope of today, but to drive to the emotional core of what it is that you're actually saying. Find the emotion. In the emotion is the connection with the audience. I hope that's satisfying. I know that I'm bringing a mountain again and again and just showing the tip. But know that there's a lot. And on my website, there actually are some blog posts that dive deeper into many of these subjects. And you're welcome to read. And I'll show my email at the end. And you can send me any questions you have. RG, is it different pitching a short film versus a feature film? How about documentary? Well, RG, do you think you're pitching the same people? Bring it back to audience. Are you pitching the same people? Are the same types of investors or actors or agents or anybody? Are the same people for documentaries and narrative features or short films? Probably not. So this is why we need to get to know these people really well. Who's listening? What are they looking for? I promise you that when you pitch a feature film, I promise you, if you're pitching to smart people, it's not about the finances. It's as simple as that. It's just not about the finances. Smart investors know that movies are a very risky investment. So trying to convince them that they're going to make a fortune like the Blair Witch Project and all that stuff that I see in movie pitches all the time, that's almost insulting their intelligence sometimes. So drive to the emotion. See why they're here. Why did they want to be part of this journey and this mission? And I think that that applies to documentary and features too, but in slightly different ways. Their interests are different. The examples that you're going to bring are different. An investor or anybody that is listening to a pitch about documentaries probably knows documentaries. So bring examples from documentaries. If you bring examples from narrative feature films when you're pitching a documentary, then people might ask you, yeah, okay, but what, give me something that's more relevant. So again, know your audience. Okay, David, if you're pitching for a team to be engaged and funded, how do you decide which members do what part of the presentation? This is a great question to basically start bringing the team into the presentation and not only you. If you're only founders, if you have a co-founder, I think it's very, very important to bring the co-founder or people who are in the leadership to not just stand there and smile, right? But to show that they are part of the thing. And why is David asking this question? Because he knows that an investment in a company is not only an investment in the individual, but in the company. And sometimes a company is as good as its weakest link, unfortunately. So you want to see the people on stage or in the room or whatnot talk intelligently and express their strengths. So it's a great question. How do you decide which members do what part? So first of all, of course, you would want the members to display their strength. That's just the reality of it. Even if you have a great CFO and he stumbles with the numbers, then it's not wise to put them in a situation where they're going to demonstrate that they're weak at something. So we want them to be strong at something. At the end of the day, we all just need to remember that the data and the hard information that most of the time we put in the foreground is not what a pitch is really about. The reason why David is asking this is because of trust. We want to trust the team. How do we build trust? It's not by numbers. It's not by this and that. Do a team meeting, right? And see how you can build trust, how you show that you are such a team that you complete each other's sentences, that you're so close to each other, that each member of the team can build trust in their own way. That's what it's really about. And I would say that if you are in a position of leadership in an organization, you have to show that trust. You have to show that authority. It's your responsibility to do that. So even if it feels scary and new and all that stuff, great. We're starting to tackle the exact things that actually going to make you a great leader in business. Forget the pitch. They're going to make you good at what you do. So now we're using the pitch to develop ourselves and actually do this job really, really well. And I think that investors are looking for that more than being already best. Again, the investors that you're pitching to are not stupid. They know that you are beginning. They know that you have a lot to learn. That's all fine. But you have to show that you're able to learn, right? I lead many times with my failures than my successes because I want to show that I have already had lessons, that I am able to adjust, that I'm able to learn. It's a very important quality in a leader that is important to show in the foreground and say, yes, I know that I'm not going to get everything right. But guess what? With you, I'm going to learn. And none of my failures are going to be so detrimental that they're going to ruin everything. Okay, any last questions before we finish? Wow, I spoke a lot today. Does anybody want to ask a question, God forbids, by voice and not by text? Is there a user guide? Good question. Is there a user guide? I don't know. I think that the idea that there is a user guide I know why you're asking, and I sort of one way or another, I'm asked this question. But the fact remains that the answer to a good pitch is within yourself. Your strength and the way that you see the world, you, who you are, is what's going to make the pitch great. So there cannot be a user guide. If there was a user guide, then everybody would be a billionaire, right? Because everybody would be so successful. But they're not. So instead, we need to work on it. But you're already here. So guess what? You already did more than what a lot of people are doing. So you're already ahead. Okay, everybody. Any last question before we finish up? And I will just say, um, this is my email. Tal@cinematikimpact.com. Visit my website. You'll find some text there that aligns sort of with what we talked about today. Or shoot me an email. This email is my email. It doesn't go into some AI thing that pretends to be me. It's actually me. So send me a message. Tell me what you think. Happy to hear responses and happy to help you in any way. Last question here. Does thin humor is important, always important. And I'll even give you a hint, and it's just the truth. It doesn't even need to be good humor. You don't need to be a stand-up comedian. You just need to show that you don't take yourself too seriously. Um, if you can kind of laugh about yourself, if you can show how you mess up and how you learn and all that stuff, if you're fun to be around with, that's super important because the people you're pitching to, you're asking them to be in the trenches with you. So, you don't want to be in the trenches with somebody who is really not interesting and annoying and boring and, all like boo, 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 boo. So yeah, of course. Additional resources, I said on my website, Cinematic Impact, there are more resources, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I occasionally post links to things that I think are relevant, so absolutely there. And beyond that, the best resources is just your experience and your truth. Uh, Copy paste LinkedIn. I don't have it. You see, unprepared. -1 point for Tal. Don't have my LinkedIn here, but trust me, just search on LinkedIn Tal Lazar. It's not that common of a name. And I think that on my website, there's also like the Instagram and LinkedIn, all that stuff. You'll find it. And if you can't find it, just send me an email and I will send you my LinkedIn. Okay, everybody, have a great rest of your day and good luck pitching. Bye, everybody.